This talk was supposed to be about dev being the friend of every project, but when I was making the slides, it turned out that actually most of the stories that I'm about to tell are exactly the same thing, and the presentation, I think, is pretty, tells my story, but it no longer fits the title, so I changed the title. It's about the second version of the startups. My name is Paweł Polewicz. sorry. And I lead a small company which is doing only Python backends remotely. But we are not the #1 choice for startups. For some reason, startups don't come to us to implement their solution. They only do so once someone implements it. They check the market, they see that they have a market fit, that it works, but their software is not so good, and it constrains their growth. Oftentimes, it doesn't really work, and nobody can tell why. There are no logs, there are a lot of try-except statements with no error handling whatsoever. So it's just incredibly frustrating for them, and their current developer can't really fix it anymore. So they are looking for an alternative. And I'm usually team number 2, number 3, sometimes team number 4. I'm going to tell you a story about the customer that I had last week. They wanted, the customer was an owner of a luxury bar in Moscow. And they wanted to have a nice reservation system for their tables, okay? Not pretty hard. They were using Google Calendar, but it looked very bad with 12 tables or 14 tables. You can imagine how it looks. So they wanted a nice software system for it. They hired a designer. This is what the designer brought. So they hired a software team to implement this. And 3 weeks later, there was nothing that they were shown as working, and they started to be worried. Where is their project going? So they hired me for an audit. I accepted. And this is what I find out. The project was going for 3 weeks. There were 1,279 commits for a reservation system or tables, which started to be weird. But then I noticed there were 16 people working on the project, which was very weird. They used some kind of extreme transparency system, so every task they were working on was budgeted to be less than 80 minutes. So there was a lot of information about the project in the project management tool. The customer felt very good. He felt he's in control. He can see every piece of expense. But with 251 pull requests, it didn't really look like a finished product. 300 GitHub issues with detailed description and billing. But I noticed that in one pull request, a developer was telling another developer how an if statement works, which is the most basic conditional instruction in every language. Despite that, they were billing over $50 per hour for such developers. And so the project cost was over $9,000 with nothing that was shown as working. Nothing actually worked. They tried to log into the system, and the only thing they seen was 500 internal server error. So we dug into the code to see how much more work is remaining. I opened the first active issue. It was cannot create more than one reservation, which was a funny issue to have after 3 weeks. Uh-oh. Okay. Completion was estimated at less than 1%. If this system was built the same way with the same people, it would actually cost close to $1 million. And the customer decided he doesn't want to do this. 7,000 lines of code with a lot of tests. Honestly, they were using test-driven development. Very good technique. Should increase the speed by, I think it increases between 2 and 3 times. It didn't really help it. So why did it happen? Were they not using Agile? No, that was not the problem. Finding a good developer is very, very, very hard. If you already have a developer, telling whether he's good is very hard. I was ignoring this problem, and it almost killed my company. When I have seen the 3-digit number on my bank account, this was the moment where I was very close to death, and I had to open my eyes and look death closely into the eyes and understand what is happening. So don't try this at home or at your own company. What is important in recruiting developers? I thought senior developers are good reviewers, so if we recruit good reviewers, they're going to be senior developers, and it's going to work out well. They are the people that know how to write good software. So I based my recruitment process on that, and I thought it's going to work well. Not really. This is how it worked. I checked Python skills and code review skills. I thought in the middle, I'm going to find some good developers. This is how the test actually looks. It's 29, I think, lines of code, inspired by a piece of code written by a junior developer at one of my other customers who had a large problem with his software. This contains about 30 issues. The best person that reviewed this found 25. I wrote it, and I only thought there was 18. So I learned a lot from other candidates reviewing my code. The task is to look at the code and comment every possible issue. Okay? There are some simple issues, there are some more complex issues, but generally, if someone can find many issues in a snippet of code, then we can reason they are more senior developers. And it really filtered out the junior developers well. The junior developers, they scored between 10 and 12 points, sometimes 8. More senior developers scored over 18 points, 17, 18. Some people scored 22, 25. Those were people who worked in teams. They were able to review the code. Turns out that's not enough. You also need to care about performance. And I learned this the hard way. This is another interview task that we changed the first task into that task. And this is the time measured. How long did it take to solve the exact same task to each of the candidates? And you can see that there is a guy that took more than 30 hours, and the guy who is green right here, it was 1 hour and 37 minutes, the exact same task. This is a difference of 18 times. If you accidentally hire a few of those developers, it doesn't matter if you're agile, if you estimate in man days or story points. It's going to be difficult to ship anything. So, okay, let's recruit people who know the language well and are high performance. This should help, right? Well, yeah. Sometimes people need to talk to each other. And the problem is, if you check one developer and see whether he's really good. It turns out some people can communicate better than other people. We ran a training 2 weeks ago that I must mention. It was a simulation of delegation of a task. So one person has some scope to delegate, and the other person needs to understand what needs to be done. Doesn't need to implement code, just understand what's happening, okay? We ran this on 2 groups. The first group was a director that worked at a corporation for many years, was used to delegating. She read the assignment and formed a bullet point list of things to delegate. And the other person wrote down everything that was said and asked many questions, was listening actively. They got maximum score, 16 points, I think. Next day, we ran the same task on 2 people that did not have that much experience. They only scored 30%. Now, no technical skill is going to help you out of the situation where the task is not properly passed into the person that is implementing it in 70%. If you lose 70% of the requirements on the way, you're doomed. So not caring about communication skills can kill you. We have measured this. Some people implemented the test assignment with no questions. They got the assignment. It was precise. They implemented it. The other candidates asked many questions, which were either irrelevant or already covered in the task. The maximum, I think, was 16 emails exchanged back and forth to describe the, so that the person can understand. Communication is a bottleneck, and if we don't care about it too much, then we're going to spend a lot of time talking, like the guys implementing the Russian reservation management system. There was no shortage of conversations, no shortage of GitHub issues and comments. An average number of comments in a GitHub issue or pull request was 30. They did all the talking. But it didn't really help them complete the project. So, okay, communication is also important. This is the chart that shows the delegation threshold. And also, many of those candidates that solved this task, for some reason they thought they need to implement a web application. About 30% of candidates implemented a web application where it was not needed. They took 3 or 4 hours to set up the environment, the database, time zone configuration, everything that the framework needs, and they didn't use it. It was not necessary to implement the task. This is the line which basically shows everyone that was above the line, with a few exceptions, figured it out it's a web application. Well, it was not. And people below have seen the actual requirements and implemented the minimum version. The problem is, if you hire those people that like to over-engineer things, they will do a lot of work and put a lot of effort in, but this effort is not value. It's largely waste. Lukas, there is a pop-up on your screen. And I think it's blocking the clicker. Nope. Oh, thank you. Okay, so what else is important? Lean thinking, yeah. Trying not to do things, it's a very good value. Being able to work remotely, my company is fully remote. Turns out a significant number of people, they would like to work remotely, but they cannot. So checking whether they actually can work remotely is an important property. If you don't care about this, there's going to be trouble. And also DevOps skills and countless other things. There are cheaters on the interview. My favorite candidate has received a task, a very simple task, and 15 minutes of time. He was on a video conversation with my assistant. And he folded his arms and sat down there for 11 minutes, waiting for someone else to solve the task. Then he copy-pasted the solution into the screen, the shared screen with my virtual assistant. And he said that it's solved. I even wanted to pay him to get me in contact with the person that really solved the task. Unfortunately, the solution was not correct. So, yeah. At one time, we measured how many candidates tried to cheat. It was more than half. The codility tests are really good, but there is no guarantee on who solves them. I had seen many job posts which was solve this codility task for me. And people actually do those. That's why I use a video conversation to guarantee that this is the person that I'm talking. Okay. Oh, now it works. So the long test that I have shown has a high cost of reviewing because it checks performance, quality of the code, quality of design, communication skills, other stuff. It takes 40 minutes to review. So we have introduced another test, which is really simple and takes seconds to check. I will tell you what the test is. Invert the bytes of small binary file. That's it. Who thinks this task is hard? No one. Who thinks this task is difficult? No one? Okay. Okay. Invert byte order of small binary file. Is it an easy task or a hard? Fits in memory. Like 1 kilobyte, whatever. This is a very, very, very basic task, something that you should be able to solve after a boot camp. Unfortunately, 79% of the candidates fail those tasks. They cannot do simple inversion of strings. If you have a stream of strings, invert every other string, or invert a small binary file, or any simple basic task that is just more than an if statement or more than a loop. 79 candidates fail those. So we use this as a filter for the bigger task. So what's the takeaway? I don't really know how to do this perfectly, but I spent a lot of time, and sometimes I hire a good developer that is capable of working on a high difficulty project, like you have a warehouse with 450 customers with perishables. They ship the vegetables and stuff to restaurants and marketplaces, right? And you need to find the best route. So if someone is not able to invert a small binary file, which can be done in like 5 lines of code, how is he going to solve one of the hardest problems that your business is facing? Oh, okay. Yeah. So if you want to score high, if you want to have a team number 1, you need to put a really good amount of effort in it. So people think, recruitment is HR. Well, no, everything depends on it. Everyone needs to take an effort to do this. Figure out a better recruitment task, right? Or figure out a way to advertise your job to the right people. Because without this, you can find yourself in the left hand of my plot, where you have slow developers who can't communicate. And it doesn't matter if your product owner is very good, or if you follow the Scrum procedure. They're not going to deliver anything. All right. Yeah, this thing is really funny. Okay, so I'll be attending the after party. If you want to talk, maybe there are questions. Time for questions? Yeah.
What do you think about the learning process after people joins your
I tried
company?
that. Have you actually measured this? Have you tried teaching people hard skills, soft skills? And have you seen how long would it take for this developer to improve to the level at which he will be really good?
I didn't use any measure for that, but it was rather observing progress of work. But, well, measurement, there is measurement, of course. You can use many tools for that, but usually you just observe such person as he or she makes progress from one day to another.
Yes, so this observing of progress, I did this for many years, and I thought it works, that the person is smarter than he or she was yesterday. But later on, where I faced death, I realized the only reasonable way is to give the exact same assignment to multiple people, creating waste in terms of functionality. Take a real task that your company needs to be doing, okay? One person does it, and then you give the same task to the other people. And you find with the exact same task who is at what level. Then you can let people grow, see, if they improve, and sometime later perform another experiment like this to measure the actual improvement. What I have found is it is an extremely slow process, both in terms of hard skills and soft skills. You need training. You cannot just expect people to delegate better or listen better because they learn it on the job. You need to send them on some kind of workshop or organize something.
Well, what I know from my own experience is that if there are really good seniors, teachers on the team, they can make amazing progress. They can help do people amazing progress in just a few weeks sometimes. Of course, it is not a rule, but if you have mentors, people who take care about you, you can do visible progress, and the value that you give to the company, to your business, can be much better.
Yes, I understand. And you are correct. In some situations, it may work, and I have seen it in some companies. I don't think it was related to the fact of whether the companies were remote or not. It's about something else. My current company has very short projects. Before a junior developer can set up his environment, we already finished this project. We started and finished the next project, and we're in project number 3, and he already finished setting up his environment to the first project. If you have a longer project, slow pace, then yes, learning is possible. You need to have an appropriate ratio between senior developers and junior developers. Because if there are many juniors, the senior will realize what's happening, will try to code everything by himself. So if you keep the ratio properly and you don't put a lot of stress on them and you give them the ability, yes, they can learn. But it depends on the project. On short projects, it is not possible. I tried it for many months. Nobody learned a thing. Using long-term projects to learn.
I've got a question about finding this experienced and not experienced people, or maybe rather people who can cooperate easily and not. In my practice, we're often trying to pair program with them, trying to model together some system on a whiteboard. have you got any experience with this, let's say, social programming? Did it work for you or not? Why?
Well, it's good if you can show the junior developer how to.
Not necessarily junior, any person from the street.
Yeah, so pair programming is really good for some stuff. If you want to do crude interfaces, then probably not. Designing things together is really a good idea because you get a better design. Implementation itself, it depends on the seniority of the developer. If he's still learning the language, then implementing things together is a good idea. They will teach themselves about the language. If you have people that are more senior than that, then they're not going to learn anything about the language because they know it all already. So what exactly are they going to do together better, right? The pair design or team design is a magnificent, great thing, okay? And I always do it. As for implementation, if you have people who know the language, know the environment, I don't think there is a lot of benefit to it. You skim the code in review and see whether the person used some nice tricks or missed something. And that's enough. That takes way less time. If you have intermediate developers, that should work way better. So choose your tools for your team. All right.
One more question. What is the outcome of this, let's say, quite lengthy selection process? What was the final drop rate?
The final drop rate. I interview more than 100 candidates before I hire one who is really good and can fit that job.
So one out of 100.
Say again?
So finally 1 out of 100.
Yeah. 1 out of 150 maybe is really good, that can jump into any project and fix it, right? With high performance. If you check all this stuff, then you're going to reject a lot of people.
Okay, but in this situation, you have to count also the time you have spent for this process.
Yes, so you need to optimize the recruitment process. The same way you optimize software, you also need to improve this process. And so what we did is we realized the process is expensive. In order to reduce the cost, we started filtering everyone who was applying for a senior position but had actually less than 4 years of experience. We filtered them out on CVs, and then for the remaining people, we give them first an easy task, which 80% of people fail, despite having more than 4 years of experience, yes. And then if someone passes that, how many people pass the first phase? 2% people pass the all the screening tasks, and then we get to the last task, which is expensive. Actually, it takes like an hour to check it and to feedback the candidate. Why I'm doing this? People complained because you give someone a task that can be solved in 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes people spend 16 hours to solve it, and then you say that the solution is not correct. And people complain by email and say that it's not nice for them to go through such long recruitment process. So what we do is we filter them first on a very short task. If someone cannot solve a very simple problem, he's not going to be able to solve the big, hard task. Does that answer your question? Okay. Someone over there?
I also have a question.
Okay.
In case if nobody is against. As I understand, you're a sole person that is responsible for the recruitment process. Have you ever tried to delegate recruitment process to the teams and to check the chemistry, how it will look like?
Right. So actually, every decision in my company about recruitment is handled by Piotr. I delegated fully to him. The company is too small for everyone to participate in it. So we cannot have the team interviewing it. I'm doing this with Piotr and with the assistant. If the team was larger, I would rotate the duty of reviewing the test assignments to multiple developers. Does that answer your question? How big? What, how big? How many developers would you need? Okay. My company? About 10 people.
Hi, I have a question about strategy of recruitment, if you had any. Like, did you wanted to have as many as possible senior developers with great skills, or meet and trying to share the knowledge between each of them?
Yeah, so we have very specific projects, and knowledge sharing doesn't work very well if you're hired to fix a project which was messed up by someone else. So this particular company is not so great for learning. It's a company that is hired when everything else failed, and we need to teach stuff to the developers from the existing team, or we are replacing the existing team because they couldn't perform very well. So knowledge sharing, yes, it's a thing, but it depends on the assignment. If the project has only a few days, or if it's very specific, and the knowledge from one project is not applicable to another project, then it's not going to work very well. And this is why most of the customers that hire me experience failures, because you need a lot of experience to do this project, and finding developers with that experience was impossible for them. That's why they need to hire someone from the outside. Okay? Is that it? Okay, thank you.